Chapter 1235. Feng Ruching, the Holy Warrior 6. Some people wanted to follow them, but the crack had completely closed before they could leap into the sky. They had been isolated from the other part of the world. The sky was blue. The spiritual chi was so thick that it could turn into a heavy mist. This mainland was as beautiful as a fairyland. Jia Xen fell from the sky and landed on the street in a small town. He stared dumbly at the familiar place in front of him and cried loudly. Why? Why am I back again? Why? Back then, he had risked losing more than half of his strength to leave this place. It was not easy for him to recover his strength. But now, why? Why did he return to this nightmare world? Found it. A pair of shoes suddenly came into his sight. Jia Xen dumbfoundedly looked up, and for a moment, a young face appeared before his eyes. The young man was in a suit of armor with a bone-chilling aura. He had a perfectly chiseled face and sharp features that gave him a stunning look. He sneered at Jia Xen, who was sitting on the ground crying. Jia Xen, how dare you try to escape? You've bullied my master's cat. Do you think you can run away that easily? Jia Xen looked depressed. He was no longer the proud man he was in Tianshan Manor before. The thought of losing all his power had almost driven him to madness. Can I see Tianya one more time? I think I can explain. The young man abruptly drew his sword and placed it at Jia Xin's neck. I heard that before you disappeared from this place, you've left a message that you will kill all of my master's cats when you return next time. Jia Xin's face stiffened. I thought that I would never come back. Explain it to my master later. Jia Xen was dragged away. His tears and snot were all over the ground. He was cursing angrily, but the young man did not know who he was cursing at. He was only doing his job. He had to drag Jia Xen to his master and force him to kneel to apologize to all his master's cats. The entire street was left with Jia Xin screaming and cursing. Mu Huan, if I can go back again, I'm going to break your bones into pieces. Me for extra chapters. Thinking about his days in Tianshan Manor, it was really cool. There were countless servants by his side, obeying his orders, and countless women waiting for his presence. Whenever he showed his power, everyone in the world would worship and obey him. Why did he have to leave such wonderful days? It was all because of Mu Huan and her mother. If it was not for Mu Huan, he would not have rushed to the Mu family, let alone met the Dark Dragon. If it were not for the Dark Dragon, he would not have to return to this place. It was like a nightmare to him. He hated her. He could not wait to strangle that woman to death. But no matter how much he regretted it, it was all useless. Tianshan Manor. In front of Mu Manor, Qin Li, who was proud and arrogant before, stared dumbly in the direction where Jia Xen had disappeared. His whole body turned cold as he lost his senses. Especially when his eyes met those resentful eyes, his body became stiff, and his heart turned colder and colder. Jia Xen was gone, but he had left his men behind. All of these men were Jia Xin's guards, but their strength was not bad as all of them had reached Holy Warrior tier. 2 of them were already advanced Holy Warriors. Of course, their strength was different from Qin Fei's. Qin Fei had overspent her energy to make a breakthrough to Holy Warrior tier, while these men were using their real skills and could exert different kinds of power. Chapter 1236. Feng Ruching, the Holy Warrior 7. They might be afraid if Big Black was there, but now it had disappeared along with Jia Xen, and these people left behind were no match for them. Lord Jia Xen has gone. This place will be ours in the future. The 2 advanced Holy Warriors looked at each other before they turned to the people in front of the Mu Manor's gate. If you're obedient and submit to us, perhaps we will spare your lives. But for those who do not obey us, you will not have a good ending in the end. Feng Tianyu tightened his grip on Nailin Yan's hand. They looked at each other with eyes that were filled with determination. The White Phoenix subconsciously blocked Suyi, hoping that its body could shield her from any harm. Masters, Qin Li panicked and rushed toward the 2 advanced Holy Warriors. What about the Qin family? Before this, we dash, get lost. Useless. One of the Holy Warrior in a green robe grabbed Qin Li with one hand and flung him away hard. Lord Jiaxian has been willing to help the Qin family all because of your daughter. But the Qin family is nothing to us. All of you are useless. Qin Li was startled, and he hurriedly gave a sign to Qin Feier. Qin Feier's body was trembling, as if she had not seen Qin Li's eyes. A father could never hate his own daughter. Even the selfish Qin Li was like that. However, Qin Li was selfish. He knew what he wanted, and he would sacrifice anyone for that. Masters, as long as you can help my Qin family, I'm willing to give Qin Feier to both of you. Father, Qin Feier shrieked, trembling. You know that there is only one person I want to marry in my life. Why are you doing this to me? Why? I'm your daughter. I'm your daughter. Qin Li was trying to flatter those two men, but they showed no interest in that. The green-robed man sneered. Lord Jia Xan has said that the spirit herb your daughter took will make her age gradually. We don't have the herbs that can help her. So, do you think we'd want an old lady like her? I guess it won't take long before her hair starts to gray and her face starts to wrinkle. That is so disgusting. Moreover, they were different from Lord Jia Xian. Jia Xian pitied them, but these two men only cared about status and power. Me for extra chapters. Women were unimportant. Qin Li stumbled and almost fell to the ground. He had some regrets. He regretted letting Qin Feier consume the spirit herb. If it were not for Qin Shun, Qin Feier would have also reached advanced holy warrior tier, and he would not have had to face all these things. Yes, it was all Qin Shun's fault. Qin Shun, you ungrateful kid. You've caused so much harm to my Qin family. You'll be blamed and be cursed for this, you ungrateful. Nailin Yin slapped his face, expressionlessly. You want to curse him again? Huh? Qin Li laughed wildly. It's no use trying to defend him. He was saved by my Qin family, and there's no way he's your child. He's an ungrateful kid. He has been abandoned by the world. If the Qin family were doomed this time, these people would also end up with the same fate. The holy warriors' skilled masters definitely would not let them go, and those curses alone would be enough to make them suffer forever. Huh? Chapter 1237. Cutting a bloody path, Nailin Yin slashed with her sharp sword. Suddenly, a bright, red line appeared on Qin Li's neck. His fresh blood gushed as he fell to the ground. Qin Li ignored the wound on his neck as he laughed wildly. Am I wrong? Qin Shun is inherently an ungrateful kid, and people like him will not have a good ending. You're doomed. Even if you escape today, you'll be cursed for things you've done for the rest of your lives. Qin Li smirked as his crimson eyes stared at the people in front of him. Nailin Yin sneered. The Qin family had barged into my husband's manor, took away my son, made him suffer for years of pain, and then slandered him as a cruel, ungrateful child. I think the real ungrateful child is someone else. She turned to Qin Feier and stared at her with eyes filled with mockery. Obviously, that person was Qin Feier. But those holy warriors did not want to waste their time. They looked at each other and abruptly rushed into the air, surrounding all the crowd below them. We don't care what grudges the Mu or Qin families have. From today onward, Tianshan Manor will be our master, and those who do not obey us will be killed. These are all strong holy warriors, and two of them were advanced holy warriors. Just one step away to reach King Warrior tier. In Tianshan Manor, these skilled masters were already so powerful to them. The pressure from these masters alone was enough to shock the heart. The crowd, led by Qin Li, all knelt down, knowing clearly which choice would be most beneficial now. Whoever ruled Tianshan Manor, that person must be better than that bastard Gu Shi. Father, Qin Feier's turned paler when she saw that Qin Li had submitted himself to those skilled masters. Initially, she had just wanted to pressure the Mu family. A vicious woman like Feng Ruqing did not deserve to be with Nan Xian. She was even more unhappy when her brother had been taken away by Feng Ruqing. Me for extra chapters. That was why she desperately wanted to prove herself, to prove that she would always be stronger than Feng Ruqing. But everything that was happening now was beyond her expectation. She never thought that she would have allowed for these unknown people to rule Tianshan Manor. She did not know if what she was doing was right or wrong. Qin Feier was so confused that even when Qin Li pulled her down to a kneeling position, she was unaware of it. She just stared dumbly at the world that she could no longer see clearly. "Please, I'm begging on you. Please let us go." Chen Qingyan rushed toward the skilled masters, crying, "We will listen to you. Please let us go." Mu Shi and Mu Huan had also knelt down. They felt uneasy, but they had no chance of fighting back as the people that they were facing now were too strong to be defeated. The clansmen of the Mu family looked at each other, seemingly unable to make up their minds. In the end, it was Mu Xian who started this first as his shaking knees gradually fell to the ground. He knelt and kowtowed hard on the ground. "Mu Xian!" The old master Mu roared in anger. He would not care if Qin Xinyan and her son had shown their weakness, but Mu Xian was a member of the Mu family. Mu Xian had done many foolish things in his life, but the old master Mu had never thought that his family members would be so greedy and fearful of death. Chapter 1238. Cutting a bloody path too. Perhaps it was because of Mu Xian who had started it first that the other elders, too, knelt and kowtowed to the powerful enemies in front of them. They had given up all their pride and dignity to save their own lives. They just wanted to live. The old master Mu felt pain every time he saw the elders kneeling in front of the enemies, one after another. And in the end, he felt somewhat numb as he looked at the Mu family's elders and clansmen, expressionlessly. "Master," Suyi calmly walked toward the old master Mu. "There's no need to be upset. After all these years, you should know these people. They are cowardly, greedy, and stupid." This was the first time that Suyi had cursed like that. Previously, Mu Xian and the others would immediately retort if anyone had cursed them. But now, they all bowed their head helplessly as they felt ashamed to retort to Suyi. But they did not feel they were wrong. Was there any difference if they had submitted to Gu Shi or anyone else? It would not affect the Mu family anyway. So, had they made any mistake? If being greedy and being afraid of death was wrong, then there would be too many wrongdoers in this world. He did not believe that the old master was not scared of death. He just did not show it to them. The old master Mu's hands were trembling. He eventually loosened his clenched fists as he sighed deeply and helplessly. "Master," Suyi smiled. Her white robe swayed elegantly in the breeze. "Ignore these greedy people. We can fight our way out of this chaos alone." Mu Ling looked at Suyi, who was as calm as ever. He then turned to Qin Qingyan, who was crying on the ground. Mu Ling felt like he wanted to slap himself hard. Obviously, Suyi was so much better than Qin Qingyan. Why did he give up Suyi for Qin Qingyan back then? The old master Mu did not even look at Mu Ling from the beginning until now. In his eyes, Mu Ling was no different from those clansmen of the Mu family. Greed and foolish. He would never be sad again with whatever decision Mu Ling made. "Father," Mu Ling's voice filled with grief and pain. "Do we really have to ignore everything for Gu Shi? Did the Mu family give no thought about this? Me for extra chapters." The old master Mu sneered. He did not say anything, but Mu Ling understood his silence. Mu Ling stared dumbly at the skilled masters in the air and slowly closed his eyes. A moment later, he opened his eyes again. Talking about Gu Shi, he had done nothing wrong. He had only forbidden his people in the chief manner from committing any sort of crimes. He did not treat any clan as slaves, as he gave freedom to all of them. If it had been someone else, suddenly, Mu Ling remembered the unlucky man who had once been killed by Gu Shi. When the former chief manor was still ruling this place, he had treated the people in Tian Shun manner as his servants. Any word from him must be obeyed by everyone. If he liked something, every clan would have to give it to him. The Luo family was nearly wiped out back then. If his father had not been able to make a breakthrough to Holy Warrior tier, and with the old master who was not good at flattering, perhaps, the Mu family would not have been able to survive. Gu Shi was overbearing, but he was not an unreasonable man. He would not simply destroy any clan if one did not violate the rules he had set. This Gu Shi was indeed a wise leader, but what would happen if these groups of people ruled this place? Chapter 1239. Luo Li and the little fox, the old Master Mu had revolted against them. Could they give preferential treatment to the Mu family? Would they not treat the Mu family like how they did the Luo family back then? There was a spark of determination in his eyes. He loosened his clenched fist as he took a few steps forward and stood beside the old Master Mu. Mu Ling had made many mistakes in his life. However, he was not a wicked man. He was deceived by Qin Qingyin back then. But if the old master's life was in danger, he could not just ignore it. Besides, in his mind, the Mu family would always be important to him. He was also afraid of death, but he knew what he wanted in his life. The old Master Mu looked at Mu Ling in surprise. He smiled coldly. Father, Mu Ling was a bit embarrassed. I'm also the young master of the Mu family, and I don't want to see the Mu family being ruled by these people. Gu Shi had given the freedom to all clans, but these people wanted to rule the Mu family. This was never going to happen. The old Master Mu did not say anything. He had even looked away from Mu Ling's face. He stepped forward. His robe was swaying slightly as he stood straight, calm, and expressionless. Those people are no longer from the Mu family. My Mu family will never submit to the enemy. The old Master Mu was still the head of the family, and he had the right to expel any member who betrayed the Mu family. And his words were not addressed to those holy warriors, but the whole world. Mu Xin and the others turned pale. Perhaps they were not expecting the old master to make such a decision. Whatever they had done, they did it for the Mu family. Was it wrong? Nailin Yin smirked as she looked back at the group of the Mu elders with their heads bowed. She then turned to the man standing beside her. Tianyu. Feng Tianyu gently held Nailin Yan's hand before he slowly loosened it. The man's figure was like a wind, and in just an instant, he had rushed into the crowd. Me for extra chapters. His gaze was stern and cold, like a king watching his kingdom. Nailin Yin had already leaped forward and stood next to Feng Tianyu. Her long sword was slicing through the enemy's body. Blood gushed out of him, staining the long sword red. Droplets of blood dripped off the blade and spattered on the ground. If these people stood in their way, they would cut a bloody path to leave this place, and no one would be able to stop them. Qin Feier's face paled as she saw her father commanding the people behind him to attack, and countless people from the Qin family fell in a pool of blood. Those skilled masters in the sky sneered as they found it was amusing to watch the people from Tianshan Manor killing each other. She looked more confused than ever. Suddenly, her eyes fell upon Qin Chen's face through the glint of swords. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she could not get a single word out of her mouth. Qin Chen's stunning face was splattered with blood, not knowing if it was his or the enemy's. The pink scar across the corner of his eye was clearly visible, yet he still looked handsome. Ha! The man in a green robe stood in the air and laughed happily. Even though Lord Jia Xian has left, Tianshan Manor will still be ours, and I love watching these people killing each other. But when Lord Jia Xian was here, there were still a few people who didn't want to submit to him. Well, it would be best if you leave this place immediately. Anyone who disobeys our orders will be killed. Chapter 1240. Luo Li and the little fox too. After he finished ordering that, his eyes flashed with an extremely cold, murderous intent. The people who were standing behind him had all quietly left, leaving only the two holy warriors who were still standing firm to the spot, looking down at these people below them. It did not take much strength for Nailin Yin and the others to deal with the people in front of them. Moreover, the old Master Mu and Master Hairon were holy warriors. But another two advanced holy warriors were eyeing them from above, and these two were the only ones who would make them wary. Luo Manor. It was no longer as prosperous as it used to be. Ever since the Qin family had captured Luo Fei, the entire Luo family had fallen and was no longer as prosperous as it once was. At this moment, in front of the Luo family's gate, Luo Li and the old lady Luo were pushed out forcefully by a group of people. The old lady Luo stumbled and almost fell down the steps, but fortunately, Luo Li was able to hold her in time and caught her balance. Luo Li turned furiously to the elder, who was the chief of the group behind her. That elder was her grandfather's brother, and also her uncle. Now, After her father was arrested, these so-called relatives did not think of helping her, but were treating her and her grandmother this way. If it wasn't for you causing trouble in the first place, Luo Fei would have almost become Master Qin's brother-in-law and wouldn't have harmed the Qin family to this point. What right do you have to stay in the Luo family? Get out of here! Without you, maybe the Luo family still has a chance to rise, and it's all because of you, bitch. You've dragged our Luo family down. The old lady's hair was white. She carried a crutch in her hand. Her pale body trembled. If not for my husband, you and these people would still be bullied by them. It was my husband who had established the Luo family. He had made the Luo family what it is today. Now that my husband is gone, and my son has been arrested, and you ungrateful men are driving Luo Li and me away. Luo Fei doesn't have a son, so the Luo family was supposed to be inherited by me. Now that Luo Fei has been taken away, maybe he has been executed. What qualifications does a girl like Luo Li have to take over the Luo family? Luo Xiang sneered. In the future, I will pass the Luo family to my grandson. At least my grandson's surname is still Luo. Me for extra chapters. The heir of a family was supposed to be a man. Luo Li was a girl who would get married and have a child, so she was not qualified to take over the Luo family. Previously, the Luo family had Luo Fei, who was still young. Sooner or later, Luo Fei would have another son. Therefore, Luo Xiang had never been able to speak out about this matter. Now, it was good that Luo Fei had been caught. There would be no wrong done for him to take over the Luo family. Instead, these two women had no shame, refusing to leave this place. Besides, what had happened to the Luo family to date was all because of these bitches. The old lady Luo was so furious. She could not say a word as she pointed at the group of people. This Luo family, it was her husband who had fought to the death to protect it. But in the end, he had only helped a bunch of ungrateful people. Stinky bitches, get out of here. If you ever set foot in the Luo family again, it'll break your legs. As soon as Luo Xiang finished speaking, he waved his sleeves, turned away, and left. Chapter 1241. Luo Li and the Little Fox 3. The old lady was so angry that she fell straight backward. Grandmother! Luo Li was so anxious that she almost cried. She rushed over to support the old lady Luo's body and helped her lay on the ground. She stared furiously at Luo Xiang, who was about to leave. She stood up and rushed toward Luo Xiang, firmly grasping his arm. Before Luo Xiang could react, she bit his arm fiercely. The young girl's teeth were so sharp that she had almost bitten off a piece of flesh from his arm. Ah! Luo Xiang drew a breath in pain. He swung his arm and pushed the young girl hard to the ground. His eyes were fierce as he said angrily, "Go and beat her up, hard." Those from the Luo family were all holding wooden sticks as they approached the young girl. The young girl's eyes were fearless. She stared hard and fiercely at Luo Xiang with strong hatred in her eyes. The wooden sticks landed on Luo Li's body so hard that her eyes turned red from the pain, but she bit her lip in an effort not to scream or cry. Li, the old lady Luo, slowly opened her eyes and saw those sticks landing on Luo Li's body. Hit by hit, like knocks on her heart, making her heart bleed. She trembled and unable to utter another word. She desperately wanted to crawl toward her most beloved granddaughter, but she had no strength. His nails were bleeding on the ground, and she could not get to her side. The old lattice eyes were bloodshot and filled with grief. Oh my Li! Luo Li blocked the wooden sticks with her arms as her body was covered in blood. Her hair disheveled and her face smeared with blood. Suddenly, a red glow flashed. Luo Li felt like there was a fluffy tail brushing across her cheek. It was warm with a familiar scent, and the people had stopped beating her body. She froze, her eyes wide as she looked at the little fox that stood in front of her like a blanket, blocking all attacks from her. It was Firefox from the Weak Fox clan. Me for extra chapters. Its eyes were also red, and it was very demonic yet beautiful. Little fox. Little fox, didn't you say you'd come to me after transforming? Why? Did you have to show up now? The little fox held Luo Li with its paws. It caressed her cheeks with its tongue, licking away all the tears that were flowing down her cheeks. There's another fox to join the fun. This fox is too weak. There's no use in keeping it. Just kill it. As for Luo Li, break her legs and throw her out. With Luo Xiang's words, those people were no longer merciless and were using all the strength they had to swing the long sticks onto the fox's back. The fox spurted out a mouthful of blood, and its vision gradually became blurry, but it could not bear to close its eyes. Therefore, it kept its eyes wide open, trying to hold the girl in front of it. The girl had a sweet smile when it met her for the first time. It loved her smile. Her smile was like sunshine. It warmed its heart and filled with sweetness. The little fox's body was a little weak. It seemed to have lost so much energy, it fell into Luo Li's arm. Chapter 1242. Luo Li and the little fox, for its breathing became faint as if it would disappear at any moment. Luo Li held the fox in her arms tightly, covering it with her small head. She was not crying, but the wind around her sounded like a low sob. Little fox, I'm sorry. She knew that her little fox was already weak from the beginning. There was nothing much it could do. However, the little fox had promised her that if it could transform into a human, it would come back and marry her. She had trusted it. Even if it took 100 years or 1,000 years for a fox to change into human form, she would wait. If it did not happen in this life, she would wait again in the next life. If they could not make it in the next life, she still had the next and the next. Manor Master, everyone turned to Luo Xiang, not knowing if they should continue beating her or not. Ever since Luo Fei was caught, Luo Xiang had become the head of the Luo family, replacing Luo Fei. Perhaps Luo Xiang still had a last shred of conscience. After seeing Luo Li, who had her head buried in the little fox's fur, he did not give any order to his men. He snorted as he waved his sleeves. Even if I don't kill this fox, it won't live much longer. As for Luo Li, he'll let her go if she promises to behave and never return to the Luo family again. He looked at Luo Li one last time before he turned around and calmly walked into Luo Manor. Liar. Old Lady Luo finally crawled up next to Luo Li. She pulled the young girl in her arms and cried loudly. What has our Luo family done? First came Qin Xiaoye, and now there are so many ungrateful men making my liars suffer so much. My old man, do you see this? This is the clan that you've helped back then. You've endangered yourself, stealing the secret treasure to help Luo Xiang break through to this strength. But he's treating your granddaughter like this, and he wants to drive me out of the Luo family. My old man, come back and take a look, and then take this crowd away. All of them. Oh my Li, me for extra chapters. Old Lady Luo cried hard as she saw the wounds on Luo Li's body. She never thought that she would have to suffer like this again in her old age. Grandmother, will the little fox die? Luo Li raised her eyes and asked. Old Lady Luo wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. If it was not for the fox just now, maybe Luo Li's injuries would have been worse. Let's go to Gu Manor. Master Gu is kind and won't ignore us. He might have a way to save the fox. All right. Luo Li was not crying anymore. She stood up and smiled sweetly as she stared at the little fox in her arms. I'll save you, little fox. I'll save you. She gently caressed the little fox and slowly raised her head. Suddenly, she was stunned. She saw a young girl who was approaching her not far away. The long sword in the young girl's hand was stained with blood. Her face was cold and solemn, and there was a pot above her head that was constantly spinning, making an uncomfortable buzzing sound. Along the way, Feng Ruqing had noticed a few holy warriors. They were clearly from the same group of people who were in Gu Manor just now. She also did not hesitate to slay them, leaving corpses everywhere. Suddenly, she stopped and looked blankly at Luo Li, who was holding a fox in front of her. Chapter 1243. A girl who came in the moonlight. Feng Ruqing's eyes narrowed when she glanced at Luo Li's scars. The atmosphere suddenly became extremely tense as a chilling, murderous intent filled the air. The giant pot was too frightened to make any more buzzing noises. It timidly hid, wondering if it had done something wrong that had made its master so mad. Luo Li burst into tears and could not stop herself, as if she had found her mainstay. She did not even notice that Feng Ruqing was already in front of her. A pair of tear-filled eyes gazed at her in a daze. "Come with me." Feng Ruching did not stop walking and walked right past Luo Li. Her face was expressionless, and her red dress was soaked with blood. The air became extremely cold as it swept over the girl's cheeks. Luo Li held the little fox in her arms and followed right behind Feng Ruching. She wanted to ask Feng Ruching to save the little fox several times, but after seeing Feng Ruching's cold demeanor, all her words were suddenly gone. But a few minutes later, a bottle was thrown into her arms, landing just above the little fox's head. The bottle was filled with spirit soup and was still warm because it had been stored in the medium. There was no decay on the bottle, as all bottles used by Feng Ruching were specially made. Luo Li's heart was overjoyed as she twisted the lid off the bottle and fed all the spirit soup to the little fox. Only when she noticed that the little fox's breath had stabilized did her heart gradually calm down. When she came to her senses, she found that Feng Ruching had already gone far away. She hurriedly chased after her. "Xiaoqing, where are we going?" "Mu Manor." Feng Ruching's eyes darkened as her voice turned cold. "Luo Li, where's your father? Where did he go when you were hurt like this?" Luo Li's eyes were dim as she pursed her lips together. "He has been taken away by the Qin family. I don't know if he's still alive or not." "Oh, then did the Qin family hurt you?" Luo Li shook her head. "No, it was my uncle who has taken my father's place. He kicked my grandmother and me out, and he is the one who has hurt me like this." The little fox almost lost its life when it tried to save me from him. The storm that surged around Feng Ruching became more violent. Me for extra chapters. A cold glint flickered in her eyes, and the murderous intent was as sharp as a sword. "I have to go to Mu Manor first. Suyi is still waiting for me. After I've settled the Mu family's matter, it'll go back to the Luo family with you." But Feng Ruching's eyes narrowed. The storm around her grew more and more violent before finally exploding. Not far away, the Luo family's gate crashed down, bringing up a cloud of dust on the ground. Luo Li was dumbfounded. She stared blankly at the crashed gate and turned to Feng Ruching. The young girl waved her sleeve and left, leaving no trace behind. Luo Li assisted the old lady to walk, following closely behind Feng Ruching. Feng Ruching looked back at Luo Li. "Why are you still following me?" Luo Li was speechless. She blinked and looked at Feng Ruching helplessly. "I've nowhere else to go. Old Lady Luo is getting old. Do you want her to run around with me? You too find Master Gu. He should be awake by now, and he can help you to save your father. I need to rush to Mu Manor." Chapter 1244. A girl who came in the moonlight. Feng Ruching looked back at the damaged gate of the Luo family after saying those things. A cold ray of light flashed in her eyes. She then left without even looking back. The young girl holding the little fox stood a short distance away, staring dumbly at her back as she gradually disappeared. Somehow, her heart eased when she looked at the girl's figure. It felt as if, once she came back, everything would be fine. "Grandmother, let's go find Master." Luo Li looked again in the direction where Feng Ruching had disappeared before slowly turning around. She assisted old lady Luo and walked slowly to the chief manor. Mu Manor. Blood was splattered around the main gate. Qin Shen's face was also stained bright red with blood. He raised his hand to touch the blood on his face. The long, sharp sword in his hand was shining brightly. The two advanced holy warriors could no longer stand by and wait. They rushed forward like lightning and were already in front of Qin Shen in an instant. "Chainer!" Nailin was shocked. She sliced off the heads of the people in front of her with a sword and swiftly rushed toward Qin Shen, who knew that the man was a step faster and had violently kicked Nailin, hitting her squarely in the chest. Nailin spurted out a mouthful of blood. Her face turned pale as she took a few steps back. Her hand held tightly her chest. Her face reflected discomfort. "Yin, are you all right?" Feng Tianyu asked, looking worried. Yin shook his head. "It's fine, don't worry about me. Protect Chainer. She already owed so much to Qin Shen. She must not let him suffer any more harm." The other advanced holy warriors in the sky rushed toward Suyi. Mu Ling wanted to move forward without losing a moment, but his speed was not as fast as the White Phoenix's. The White Phoenix used its wings to protect Suyi in its arms. It wrapped her body tightly around it and leaped into the air to dodge the strike. Mu Ling seemed somewhat embarrassed when he saw Suyi in the protection of the White Phoenix. It was as if something that belonged to him had been taken away. Me for extra chapters. But he also knew that now was not the time for him to fight with the White Phoenix. Dealing with the people in front of him was the most important thing right now. The sky was dark. The raging murderous intent in the air was unabated. All the blood on the ground had dried up, and corpses were everywhere. There were no people in the streets. It was so quiet. Only the sound of clashing swords could be heard. Suddenly, one of the holy warriors leaped in front of Nalin Yin and Feng Tianyu. His gaze was cold, as if he was looking at two dead people. A small mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Before he could lift his sword, a huge shadow suddenly formed in the dark sky, covering his whole body. The holy warrior was shocked. When he looked up, he saw a huge pot on top of him, coming down on his body. The sounds of the fight stopped abruptly. Everyone stopped and gradually turned their heads. They only felt a coldness seeping into their hearts. Their bodies were so cold that they could not even move. Nalin Yin raised her head. Her gaze fell upon a familiar figure, revealing itself slowly in the moonlight. That person was dressed in red, exuding a domineering aura. It was as if time had stopped, and the whole world became silent. Qin Feier balled her hands into death grips. She shot a resentful and jealous gaze at the girl in moonlight, and even her breathing grew a little heavier. Chapter 1245. A Girl Who Came in the Moonlight, 3 Feng Ruching. She's back. Qin Feier's eyes were filled with jealousy, anger, and hope. However, she did not see the familiar figure following behind Feng Ruching, and all her hope disappeared, leaving only hatred and bitterness. Perhaps even she did not understand why she was still expecting him to appear at a time like this. It was as if, no matter how much he hurt her, she always still held some hope for him. Qing. Nalin Yin was overjoyed as she rushed toward Feng Ruching. Initially, Feng Ruching had come to find Suyi and Qin Shun, but she was not expecting to meet Feng Tianyu and Nalin Yin here. She was suddenly furious. Her powerful energy surged up fiercely as her cold eyes fell upon the holy warrior in a green robe. The green-robed man was stunned. He looked at his companion, who was crushed by the huge pot, not knowing whether he was still alive or not. He then stiffly raised his head and stared blankly at the voluptuous young girl who was dressed in red. "You? Who are you?" Feng Ruching glanced at him. "Little pot. You tell him who I am." Buzz. The huge pot moved violently, setting off a hurricane. Only then did the green-robed man notice that his companion's head was covered in blood and had been knocked into unconsciousness. Fortunately, he was advanced holy warrior. If it were anyone else, he would have been smashed into a meat pie. Even so, the green-robed man could sense the chill in the soles of his feet. His body was cold and trembling, and he could not even move. The huge pot suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. The green-robed man only felt the blackness of the huge pot's spatula frying his entire body as the pot threw him right into it with the lid in place. Everyone was confused. Qinli became somewhat uneasy. He saw that no one had noticed him, so quietly tried to retreat. But as soon as he took a few steps back, a wall of flesh appeared behind him, blocking his path. He trembled and turned back, but Hai Rong was already standing behind him, looking at him coldly. It was just a misunderstanding, bang. Hai Rong grabbed Qin Li's clothes and threw him into the crowd, sneering. "Master Mu, this guy wants to escape. Send someone to watch over him. And also these people of the Mu family who were clamoring just now, watch over all of them. None of them can escape." Me for extra chapters. What goes around comes around. These people were so arrogant before, but now they looked sadder than ever. Qing and Nalin Yin grasped Feng Ruching's hand. "I found your brother. Qin Shun is your brother, who has been missing for years." This answer was something that Feng Ruching had already anticipated. But now, when she was hearing it from Nailin Yin, it gave her a feeling like she had regained something she had lost. Qin Chun was silent. The young man's eyes were still as clear as water, but there was an unintelligible emotion surging within them. Chainer. Feng Ruching suddenly stepped forward and hugged Qin Chun tightly. This is really, really great, so you really are my brother. A brother who shares the same bloodline as me. In the previous life, Feng Ruching and Qi'er had depended on each other, but they did not have any blood relationship, just two children brought together by a reorganized family. In this life, the person who gave her irreplaceable warmth was her own brother. The same blood flowed through their bodies. Qin Chun eventually raised his hand and gently patted the young girl's back. A smile of relief mixed with happiness filled his face. Chapter 1246. A girl who came in the moonlight, for they were siblings by blood. That was fine. Whoever he was, as long as he could accompany her, that was enough. Qin Feier's face was pale, her eyes teary. Her heart was filled with indescribable pain as she looked at the two people who were embracing each other. Suddenly, she laughed out loud as the tears kept falling. Her heart was unspeakably sad. Qin Chun, she's not your sister. You don't have a relative anymore, and you can't prove that she's your sibling. Indeed, she could not admit that her father had abducted Qin Chun. Would they still have to drip blood to identify their relatives? Ridiculous. A blood test may not be accurate either. Many powerful clans could check the bloodlines, but no one in this mundane world's palace would have such skill. Qing Suyi wiped away the bloodstains on her face as she walked toward Feng Ruching. Only then did Feng Ruching notice Suyi, who was severely wounded. Her eyes were darkened as she raised her hand and gently wiped away the bloodstains on Suyi's face. Who did this? Her voice turned cold. Suyi was stunned. She looked up at the huge pot in the sky. The one in the pot. Oh, Feng Ruching calmly said. They'll give him to you for half a month. Torture him as you wish. Initially, the White Phoenix was full of joy when it saw Feng Ruching, but as soon as it heard her words, it became anxious. What's wrong with you sending an ugly man to Suyi? Is he as pretty as me? Is he as lovely as me? Suyi doesn't need him. Feng Ruching was startled after hearing what the White Phoenix said. She gave it a once-over. I never knew that you have such evil intentions. Nan Xian has just taken a bottle of tears from you, and you want to be his father now? The White Phoenix was speechless. It was over. It would soon be doomed. Would Suyi dislike it because it was a phoenix and never liked it again after discovering what it was thinking? But who knew that Suyi only looked at the White Phoenix lightly? The White Phoenix is already so arrogant now. You want Nan Xian to call you father? I bet even if you called Nan Xian father, he would still slaughter you. The White Phoenix was speechless again, but somehow it felt cornered. Me for extra chapters. It would definitely be nerve-wracking and scary if Suyi knew what it was thinking. Fortunately, Suyi did not think much about what Feng Ruching had said just now. But the White Phoenix did not know why its heart felt a little disappointed. Xiao Qing. Suyi calmly turned around. Just now, Qin Shin said, ahem. Qin Shin looked a little nervous and quickly cleared his throat. Suyi gave him a baffled glance and continued. Qin Shin said that those people from the Qin family took him. Ahem. Qin Shin suddenly coughed violently as he held his chest tightly. Feng Ruching panicked, caressing Qin Shin's body nervously. Chana, what's wrong? Where did you get hurt? I have some herbs with me. No, it's fine. Qin Shin smiled brightly. I was just slightly injured just now, but now I see you am fine, really. No need to take medication. Oh. Feng Ruching was relieved, but still not reassured. But fortunately, she did not ask any further questions, and Suyi did not say anything more. Qin Shin's heart gradually calmed down. I've just remembered something. Nailin Yin lifted up her sword. Qin Feier. People said that the Qin family was kind enough to adopt Chainer, but I didn't expect you to have such sinister intentions, using Chainer's blood as a drug primer to cure your disease. Qin Chun was dumbstruck. Chapter 1247. He was not as discerning as his son. He had concealed it for a long time, but it was eventually revealed. At this moment, Qin Chun realized the temperature around him had dropped quite a bit. He looked up somewhat nervously, gazing at Feng Ruqing. Xiao Qing, the young girl's face was expressionless. An intense storm was rolling in her dark eyes. Even if she did not say anything, Qin Chun could still feel the anger swarming out of her heart. Qin Chun, what did you promise me in the first place? Qin Chun remained silent. Looking at the young girl's expressionless face, Qin Chun could not help but panic. His mind was even more blank, and he did not have any time to think. So he could only act like an obedient boy who had made a mistake, lowering his head and whispering quietly and apologetically, I was wrong. I have let you go because you promised me that you wouldn't let yourself get hurt anymore. If she had known that the Qin family had taken him away only to use his blood as a drug primer, she would not have let him leave. No matter what, she would have forced him to stay rather than let him suffer the pain again. Xiao Qing, I don't want to hear anything right now. If you want to explain, wait until this fight is over and explain everything to me. She did not say another word to Qin Shin and walked toward Qin Feier. A fierce storm was surging around her as her long hair swirled in the wind. Her eyes were fierce, making her look even more domineering. After seeing Feng Ruqing at this moment, fear gradually rose in Qin Feier's heart, and she could not help but step back. Her snow-white face turned paler, and her eyes were filled with alarm. Feng Ruqing suddenly raised her sword and slashed Qin Feier's arm. Blood flowed out from her torn shoulder, soaking her sleeve as her face became distorted with pain. You have used Chainer's blood as a drug primer. Then his blood must be flowing in your body. I don't want my brother's blood to be tainted by you. He'll let you bleed as much as you've used his blood over the years. Qin Feier never thought that Feng Ruqing would act like this. She bit down on her lower lip without uttering a word. She was staring hard at Feng Ruqing with her angry eyes. The sword light flashed once more. Me for extra chapters. This time it landed directly on Qin Feier's chest. Blood instantly gushed out of her chest and stained her lapel red. Feier! A scream, hoarse and laced with pain, came from behind Qin Feier. Qin Feier clenched her fists. The pain in her heart was so excruciating that she was unable to catch her breath. The woman in front of her was her enemy. But she was defenseless in front of her enemy. Her dignity was trampled on by her enemy so hard that it made her heart shrink with pain and anguish. Until that familiar voice came from behind her. That was when she returned to her senses as she saw Lady Wenyu, squeezing through the crowds and rushing toward her. My Qin Feier. Wenyu cried her heart out as she turned to Qin Chun angrily. You heartless one. Why did you hurt my Feier? The one who has used your blood to save Qin Feier's life is the Qin family. What does it have to do with Qin Feier? And you? Wenyu stared at Qin Li fiercely. Didn't you see how these people are hurting Feier? What are you standing there for? Why aren't you protecting Feier? Chapter 1248. He was not as discerning as his son. Tu Qin Li's face reflected discomfort. He snapped, I told you to stay in Qin Manor. What are you doing out here? Wenyu was furious. You're asking me now? Didn't you say that Gu Shi is not going to make it, and you're still looking for someone to deal with him? Just now, Gu Shi brought that little girl from the Luo family to kill the Qin family, and he has released Luo Fei. Qin Li's lips trembled, and his pale face was pale. He had just been thinking that Feng Ruqing had a good relationship with the Luo family's little girl, and if he really could not escape this calamity, maybe he could even use Luo Fei as a threat. Ironically, when you came to tell him that not only Gu Shi was safe and sound, but Luo Fei had been rescued by him as well? Useless! In anger, Qin Li slapped Wen Ye's face so hard before turning his fierce gaze to Feng Ruqing. He gritted his teeth tightly. Feng Ruqing, Jia Xin has taken a fancy to my daughter, Qin Feier. He's just leaving to settle some matters. If you don't let us go, I'll hunt you down when he comes back. Feng Ruqing's long sword swung through the air and flew straight toward Qin Li. Her face cold and expressionless, and her pair of black eyes were calm, without any slightest fluctuation of emotions. What Qin Li feared was the huge pot, not Feng Ruqing. Therefore, with a disdainful sneer, he lifted his long sword and blocked the fierce sword that was coming at him. Crack! A crisp sound echoed in the quiet night sky. The sword in Qin Li's hand had been broken into two. Feng Ruking's sword came out of nowhere again and rushed toward him. Qin Li was shocked as he used his arm to block the attack. The sword's edge cut through his arm and blood spilled out everywhere. What made Qin Li panic even more than the wounds on his arms was the strength that Feng Ruqing had shown. Holy Warrior Tier. Nan Xian's woman had actually broken through to Holy Warrior Tier. That was a rank that he would never be able to reach in his lifetime. Qin Fei stumbled backward a few steps. Her heart ached with jealousy. Impossible. Holy Warrior Tier. How could Feng Ruqing reach Holy Warrior Tier? In this world, the only person who could make a breakthrough to Holy Warrior Tier at such a young age was Nan Xian. How did Feng Ruqing have such talent as well? Qin Fei bit hard her lower lips. Her shoulders were trembling. She was completely unable to raise her head at this moment. She, who had always been proud of herself, felt like a clown in front of Feng Ruqing. 1 year ago, she had naively thought that Nan Xian was also the type of person who loved beauty, and that was why he had fallen for a useless woman like Feng Ruqing for extra chapters. Suddenly, Qin Fei raised her head and sneered. No matter how strong Feng Ruqing was, she was still a vicious woman. Such a person would never, ever be able to match her. When she thought about what Wen Yu had said to her back then, and the fact that Feng Ruqing could kill her servant because of a few verbal arguments, her heart was somewhat relieved. After all, she would never compare herself to evil people. That was an insult to her. Mu Ling stared dumbly at the young girl under the moonlight. The young girl was clad in magnificent attire. She was even more majestic than the night, so much so it made people's hearts tremble. Holy Warrior Tier. She had already made a breakthrough to Holy Warrior Tier before her 20th birthday. And yet, back then, he still wanted to split Feng Ruqing and Nan Xian up. Mu Ling looked at Chen Qingyan, who was sitting on the ground with a deathly pale face. He then turned to the stunningly beautiful Feng Ruqing and laughed out loud. But his heart was filled with bitterness. For the first time, he admitted that he was not as discerning as his son. But the funny thing was he only realized what he had done after it was too late. Chapter 1249. Mu Ling's plea. Who is Jia Xian? Feng Ruqing turned to Suyi and asked. Suyi was startled. She did not know how to explain things that had happened to the Dark Dragon to Feng Ruqing. The White Phoenix's voice suddenly came from beside her. Jia Xian seems to be quite strong. His rank should be higher than Holy Warrior Tier. The two advanced Holy Warriors you have just dealt with just now are both his men. Oh yeah, Jia Xian attacked Big Black. To save the others' lives, Big Black has taken Jia Xian away from here. No one knows where they are. Somehow, the White Phoenix sounded a bit smug. Big Black was gone, so there would be no one left to steal Xiao Qingqing from Nan Xian. Feng Ruqing's aura became even more majestic. Qin Li, who was standing in front of her, could clearly feel her sudden aura. He was still unaware of what had happened when Feng Ruqing had suddenly kicked him and sent him flying a few meters away before falling on the ground helplessly. Qin Li coughed. He was just about to stand up from the ground, but Feng Ruqing was up upon him again when she kicked his waist. Qin Li felt that his old waist was about to break when he drew a painful breath. But before he could howl his anger, Feng Ruqing quickly kicked his chest. The violent kick almost took his breath away. Who is Jia Xian? Qin Li was at the brink of spitting blood. Hasn't that question already been answered by that White Phoenix? Is this woman deaf? Bang! Feng Ruqing immediately raised her leg and stomped on Qin Li's face. Her expressionless face made the people present a little scared, especially after they had seen Qin Li unconscious with blood all over his face. They felt like the air around them had grown colder as they began to shiver uncontrollably. Qin Li was just too slow to answer. Did she need to be so cruel and vicious? As if she had not seen those frightened eyes, her figure flashed, and suddenly, she was already in front of Qin Fei. She grabbed Feyer's lapels. Answer me. Who is Jia me for extra chapters? Qin Feyer bit her lower lip hard, with a stubborn look on her pale face. 1 second passed. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. When Qin Feyer saw Feng Rooking's palm almost striking her face, all her stubbornness disappeared in a flash. She replied in a resigned tone, I don't know anything about his background. It's Mu Huan who has brought him here. Feng Ruqing loosened her grip and dropped Qin Feyer. Qin Feyer was just starting to catch her breath when a sword suddenly flashed, landing right on her wrist. Instantly, streams of blood started to gush out like spring water. As I said earlier, it'll make you bleed as much blood as you have taken from Chainer. The bleeding in other parts of the body is too easy to stop, so now, I want your blood to flow a little longer. Her gaze swept across Qin Feyer's face and slowly turned to Mu Huan. Mu Huan's face was pale. Losing Jia Xin was like losing a protective umbrella. There was nowhere for her to go to hide from the look in Feng Rooking's eyes. She slowly retreated backward. She clenched her fist tighter as panic engulfed her. Her heart jumped into her throat. Did you bring Jia Xin here? Mu Huan was silent. She did not say a single word and had no way to defend herself. Chapter 1250. Mu Ling's plea to Feng Ruqing walked toward Mu Huan slowly. Her red dress fluttered despite the absence of wind. Her face was expressionless. Was he the one who has taken away my big gray doggy? It's Big Black, not Big Gray Doggy. The White Phoenix corrected. Why can't you even remember your pet's name? Also, it was Big Black who took him away, not him. Feng Ruqing did not pay any attention to the White Phoenix and continued. Since Jia Ekin has wounded my big gray doggy and ran away, then the person who has brought him here will pay for it. Little pot, smash her, but don't kill her at once. The huge pot buzzed and spat out the green-robed man, spinning and flying toward Mu Huan before it smashed her down. It did not use too much force as it did not want to kill her. But to this huge pot that could smash a holy warrior into a meat pie, even if it used only the minimal force, it was not something that Mu Huan could withstand. Chen Qingyan looked panicked at the huge pot that was smashing itself into Mu Huan as her heart filled with anxiety. Huaner, indeed. She loved her son Mu Shi more than anything, but Huaner was also her daughter. She was willing to let her daughter sacrifice herself, but no mother could stand by and watch her child die. Mu Shi was hiding in the shadows, trying to hide his presence for fear that he would be seen by Feng Ruqing. His eyes were continually scanning the surroundings to find a way to escape this place, ignoring Mu Huan, who was struggling under the huge pot's attack. Ah! Mu Huan's voice was torn by pain. She was running around as pain arced through her head. However, no matter how much she dodged, she could not run faster than the huge pot. Pain gripped Chen Qingyan's heart. She threw herself into Mu Ling's lap and cried, pouring her heart out. Brother Ling, I'm wrong, I know I'm wrong. I've made 1,000 mistakes, but that was all my own fault. Please let Huaner go. Huaner, after all, it's your own blood. How could you bear to see her suffer such harm? Mu Ling clenched his fist tightly. Chen Qingyan was right. No matter what mistake she had made, he could not change the fact that Mu Huan was his daughter. He hated Mu Huan for betraying him, and that she had almost destroyed the Mu family. But Mu Huan was his daughter. This child had made a huge mistake. He was angry and furious, and he would drive her out of the Mu family. The only thing he could not bear to do was to let her die for extra chapters. Suyi, he turned his head, looking embarrassed, trying to get Suyi to help him plead for mercy. As long as Suyi spoke up, Feng Ruqing might let Mu Huan go. The White Phoenix was furious and blocked Mu Ling's gaze by standing in front of Suyi. She's your daughter, not Suyi's. Chen Qingyan wanted to kill Nanxian before, so Chen Qingyan is Suyi's enemy. Why should she let her enemy's daughter go? Suyi is kind, but not to all people. There's no mercy for a person like Chen Qingyan. If my other daughters were to offend Suyi, then I would definitely. Yuck! I don't have any daughters. I wouldn't have any daughter with other people in this life, and am definitely not scum like you. Well, if it had a daughter, it would only be with Suyi. It only liked Suyi. The white phoenix looked at Suyi, and when it saw that there was still no expression on her face, it was disappointed. It wanted Suyi to understand its heart, but was a little afraid that she would know. This feeling was too complicated. Mu Ling's face stiffened. He looked at Suyi pleadingly. Chapter 1251. Mu Ling's plea 3 in this life. He had never bowed down to any woman before. But Suyi is the only exception. Suyi remained calm. She was as elegant as a chrysanthemum and as soft as the breeze. She ignored Mu Ling's words and did not even spare a glance at him. Sister Suyi. Chun Qingyan panicked. She rushed towards Suyi and kneeled, crying bitterly. Please plead for mercy on behalf of my daughter. All these mistakes were my own fault. She's still a child. A child? These two words finally made Suyi's gaze fall upon Chun Qingyan. Her gaze was soft and calm. She then sneered. She's your child. What does your child have to do with me? Sister Suyi, are you really that heartless? If you don't pity me, please do it for Brother Ling's sake and beg for mercy on Huan Er's life. Chun Qingyan's face was covered in tears. But before she could finish speaking, Suyi was already holding her sword against her neck. The icy touch caused Chun Qingyan to shut her mouth, not daring to speak again. Her eyes were filled with grievance, resentment, and anger, as if she was silently blaming them for their cruelty. The old Master Mu glanced at Chun Qingyan. Suyi's handling of a sword is quite clumsy and her hands are easy to tremble. If you bother her again, the unsteady sword on her hand might just cut you, but you shouldn't blame her. After all, Suyi is still a child. Chun Qingyan was dumbstruck. The Mu family members were all speechless. Suyi is a child? Her son was getting married soon. So why did the old master say that she was a child? How could the old master address her with such a shameless word? But this time, these people were smart enough not to argue with the old master anymore. They could still see the situation clearly. The Mu family was safe and sound. Feng Ruqing was so strong, and it was obvious that none of these people could attack the old master again. This was good. At least the Mu family was still in their hands, and they did not have to be controlled by the outsiders. Me for extra chapters. The night was like a black curtain. The crowd in Tianshan Manor was extremely quiet, even when you had been frightened by Feng Ruqing's actions. She was dumbfounded and not daring to say another word. Qin Feier's face was pale, jealous, and resentful, but nothing she could do. She felt as if all the strength in her body had been drained away, and her whole body had become an empty shell. Qin Li gradually woke up. He raised his hand and slowly wiped the blood that covered his face. Then, he saw the man in a green robe, standing motionless beside Feng Ruqing, as if he was waiting for an opportunity to act. Initially, Qin Li thought that the man in the green robe would die, but he did not expect that the man could still come out of it, safe and sound. It seemed like the pot was not much capable of doing too much damage. Thinking of this, he could not help but rejoice as he looked at Feng Ruqing with eyes full of resentment. He gritted his teeth. Holy warrior, this woman is truly awful. If you want to rule Tianshan Manor, you must first eliminate this woman. The green-robed man did not move. He was like a puppet that had lost his soul, as his eyes were all dull. Feng Ruqing turned her gaze away from Mu Huan and looked at the green-robed man. By looking at the green-robed man's expression, she immediately understood that he was completely under Little Guoguo's control. She remembered that when she was in Fangzhou mainland, Little Guoguo had not been able to control advanced holy warriors. But this time it was able to do so. Could it be that it was because her strength had increased, so Little Guoguo's power had increased a little as well? Chapter 1252. Mu Ling's plea for Feng Ruqing stroked her chin thoughtfully. Lord Holy Warrior! Qin Li called out again as he saw that the man in the green robe did not respond. Feng Ruqing frowned suddenly. He's too noisy. Swish! In an instant, the green-robed man had leaped in front of Qin Li and fiercely raised his hand, strangling Qin Li's neck. The whole street was quiet. Whether it was the clans behind Qin Li or the Mu family's hypocrites, they were all stunned, as if they had lost their senses. The green-robed man was so arrogant and overbearing before. How could he have become so obedient to Feng Ruqing now? No one understood what was happening. Even Nail and Yin and the others were a bit startled. Suddenly, a chill ran through their bodies, making their hearts tremble as they turned to the huge pot that was happily chasing after Mu Huan. Without waiting for Feng Ruqing to say any more, they all understood that the huge pot must have done something to the green-robed man that caused him to become so obedient. Don't kill him. I have things to ask him. Feng Ruqing commanded in a cold voice. Yes, master. The green-robed man's tone was respectful, truly like a slave, not even daring to show any disrespect on his face. The others were stunned with disbelief as they stared blankly at Feng Ruqing. Master? She has become his master? Qing, what has your pot done to him? How did he turn out like this? Nailin Yin had spoken out the doubts in everyone's heart. Suddenly, all eyes were turned upon Feng Ruqing, waiting for her answer. Feng Ruqing shrugged. I don't know. Well, it was true that she did not know anything. But everyone who had been disciplined by Little Pot would become so well-behaved and obedient. Qinli was so choked up he could not speak. His eyes were bloodshot and bulging. He had a more heartfelt horror than just the panic on his face. Me for extra chapters. He was wrong. Wrong. This woman, Feng Ruqing, was a devil. If he could have another chance, he would never fight against the devil again. When you screamed and rushed toward the green-robed man. Let him go. Let him go. Bang. Without hesitation, the green-robed man kicked Wen Yu, sending her flying to the ground. Wen Yu spurted out a mouthful of blood. She stared at the green-robed man and hissed. Let go of my husband. This is all Mu Huan's fault. She's the one who has made my husband trouble the Mu family, so she can act like a good person and make Mu Ling regret it. It's also Mu Huan, who wants to be the chief of Tianshan Manor, and she has asked my husband to kill Suyi. She did it all. Go and deal with her, not us. We're innocent. Wen Ye's voice was a bit hoarse as she shouted these last words. Her body was trembling, and her snow-white face panicked. Mu Ling's body stiffened, staring at Mu Huan in disbelief. He had always thought that Mu Huan was just ignorant and mischievous. She was not a bad person. She just wanted to prove herself. That was why she had made so many mistakes. But now, when Yu was telling him that Mu Huan wanted to kill Suyi, Mu Ling suddenly understood a lot of things. He realized that he had missed too much in these years. Mu Ling squatted down in pain. I was wrong. I shouldn't have pleaded for Mu Huan. He was filled with regret, sadness, and guilt. Father Suyi, I was wrong. Chapter 1253. Mu Ling's plea v. This was the first time that Mu Ling had admitted his mistake. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Her broken heart had already been riddled with hundreds of holes. It was not easy to fix it, so naturally, she would not allow anyone to hurt her heart again. The storm of war had cleared. Dawn was approaching, and the fish-belly white of early dawn gradually appeared, dispelling the haze in the sky. Yin, it's over. Feng Qianyu held Nailin Yan's hand and said in a warm voice. Initially, they had thought that they would die at this time, but now it was all over. Their daughter had become a great and powerful woman, sufficient to make them rejoice. However, no matter how excellent or strong his daughter was, she would still be the one who needed to rely on him. As it was before, Qin Feier's knees fell to the ground, her body somewhat limp, and she suddenly laughed out. Feng Ruqing, even if you're strong, you're still a demon. Nan Xian is not mine, so I don't blame you for stealing him away from me, but you shouldn't have killed my servant only because of a quarrel. She's innocent. Feng Ruqing's eyes shifted and seemed to register no memory. Your servant? Yes, she followed me to the Mu family that day. She had protected me after I fainted, and you have killed her due to a few arguments. A demon like you will be punished sooner or later. Qin Feier raised her hate-filled eyes, staring hard at Feng Ruqing. She did not see that when she said these words, Wen Ye's body stiffened. Oh, Feng Ruqing just realized. She was indeed beaten by me and thrown out by Nansien. But how? She's dead? Stop pretending. You've killed her. Qin Feier's eyes were filled with hatred. She gritted her teeth and said, "So, I actually don't understand what Nansien sees in you." Indeed, Feng Ruqing was not as kind or as gentle as Qin Feier. Me for extra chapters. Why did Nansien like her? Well, because Nansien is even more vicious than me. Feng Ruqing smiled as she walked toward Qin Feier. You said I've killed your servant. That is not vicious enough. Instead of killing a servant, what about I kill you first, a woman who is snooping around my state preceptor, so it's easier for me to become notorious, right? Then, no one will dare to even steal a glance at my state preceptor anymore. Qin Feier sneered. She then turned to Suyi again and smiled mockingly. Feng Ruqing was lucky enough to have a mother-in-law like Suyi. After all, both of them were the same kind of person. If it were anyone else, no one could accept a vicious woman without a tolerant heart like her. My mother said that it was you who killed my servant. She grew up with me since she was a child, and I love her like a sister. You've killed her. Shouldn't I get my revenge? That one person among the crowd weakly raised his hand. Feng Ruqing turned to look, and that person was a man about the same age as Nansien. Bashfulness was obvious on his face, and he seemed quite shy when he saw that Feng Ruqing was looking at him. I saw a little girl dragged out of Qin Manor by Lady Qin. Back then, that girl was still breathing, but Lady Qin ordered her men to bury her alive. Initially, I thought it was a servant who had made a mistake in the Qin family. If your Qin family hadn't had any servant executed in the past year, it should be your personal servant whom you loved like a sister. Feng Ruqing did not know this young man, but Suyi was very familiar with him, as he was one of the orphans she had adopted back then. After she left the Mu family, the old butler had sent these children to live outside the manor. Chapter 1254. Someone from Divine Herb's sect, Kami Qin Feier, was startled and looked at Wenyu in disbelief. She was not a fool either, and after looking at the flash of panic on Wenyu's face, her heart felt like it had been stabbed. Mother, were you lying to me? Feier, listen to me. Wenyu panicked. All that she wanted to explain were cut off after seeing the resentment in Qin Feier's face. The words were stuck in her throat. Why did you lie to me? Why? Qin Feier questioned painfully. Her tears were streaming down her face as her eyes were filled with anger. Luer and her were like sisters. She was naturally sad about Liu's death, but perhaps she had not realized that she hated Wenyu, only because Wenyu had caused her to have one less reason to hate Feng Ruqing. All this while, she had always placed herself on the opposite side of Feng Ruqing. She had always believed that Nansien was just a person who liked beauty, as he had fallen in love with Feng Ruqing even though she was so cruel and vicious. Now, the funny thing was that someone had just told her that her maid, Luer, had been killed by her mother, and she was buried alive by her own mother. Feier, listen to me. You shut up, shut up. I hate you, it's all your fault. All your fault. Qin Feier held her head and curled into a ball. Her eyes were filled with hatred that sunk deep into the marrow of her bones. Like a sharp sword, it pierced through Wenyu's heart. In a moment, her heart was bloodied and torn with pain. All these years, everything she had done was for Feier, but in the end, Feier hated her so much. Was she wrong? No, she was not wrong. She was just doing the best for her daughter. What was wrong with that? Wenyu's eyes showed confusion as she stared blankly at the hysterical young girl. Me for extra chapters. The blood on the young girl's wrist had dried. She lowered her arm and raised her pale face, staring at Wenyu with a bone-chilling hatred. You don't deserve to be my mother. Such a selfish woman had no right to be her mother. Wenyu's body stiffened. She tried to hold Qin Feier's arm, but Qin Feier dodged, leaving her hand frozen in midair. The whole street was quiet enough to hear a pin drop. Only the corpses on the ground were proof of the war that had taken place. Feng Ruqing did not want to give these people another chance. She held her sword in her hand and slowly walked toward Wenyu. Wenyu sensed her approaching breath and quickly returned to her senses. She sneered as she turned to Feng Ruqing. Feng Ruqing, Qin isn't your brother. He's just an ungrateful kid that our Qin family has rescued. Yet, you're so concerned about him. It seems like you didn't like it for him to be called an ungrateful kid, right? Up until now, all of the people in the Qin family did not acknowledge Qin Shen's origins. As expected, after hearing Wen Ye's words, Feng Ruqing stopped walking and gazed at her thoughtfully. Wen Yu felt relieved, but her face did not show it at all. I'm not begging you to let the Qin family go. I only want you to let Feier go. She doesn't know anything. She's innocent. If you let Feier go, I'm willing to declare Qin Shen's identity to the world and put all the blame on the Qin family to clear Qin Shen's name. Chapter 1255. Someone from the Divine Herb sect came to. It was the only thing she could do for Feier. Wen Yu, Qin Li coughed out a mouthful of blood as his face reflected discomfort. You shut up, Wen Yu snapped in a stern voice. Why do you have to talk too much here? If you can't even protect your daughter, what use is there for you to be the head of the Qin family? Feng Ruqing did somewhat appreciate Wen Yu, at least compared to Qin Li's selfishness. Wen Yu did love Qin Feier even if she had used the wrong way to show it. Feng Ruqing raised her hand, and a sword suddenly appeared in her palm. It flew through the air and landed on Wen Ye's arm. Blood flowed from her arm. She bit her lower lip from the pain. Her already pale face was bloodless now. Mother! Qin Feier's face changed drastically as her heart almost stopped beating. Although she hated Wen Yu was still her mother after all. How could she be unconcerned with her mother, who was being hurt like this? However, Feng Ruqing was about to make another move when powerful energy suddenly came swiftly from the sky. The huge pot was the first to notice this sudden energy. It stopped tossing Mu Huan and fiercely rushed forward, putting itself in front of Feng Ruqing. In that instant, all the energy fell on top of the huge pot and was absorbed entirely by the huge pot. Qing Nailin Yan's heart was so scared that it almost stopped beating. Fortunately, Feng Ruqing was safe and sound, which had made her heart eased. But her hand was gripping Feng Ruqing's arm tightly, unwilling to let go. Under the morning light, there stood a young man in a navy blue robe. This young man looked somewhat young, but was actually not. His gaze was insufferably arrogant. But all of the arrogance disappeared after he saw an advanced holy warrior standing next to Feng Ruqing. Wait, didn't the sect master say that Tianshan Manor is in crisis now? So the Divine Herb sect want to collect a slice of the cake from them? The sect master was very interested in the Qin family's manor lady, who had suddenly made a breakthrough to advanced holy warrior tier and planned to bring her back. Me for extra chapters. But who could tell him why there were so many advanced holy warriors in Tianshan Manor? There was also a pot that could absorb his spiritual qi. At this moment, the young man saw a girl dressed in red, standing under the pot, her head raised. Her gaze was faint, but it gave a sense of compulsion. This is just a misunderstanding. The young man wiped the sweat on his forehead and laughed. I was passing by, I just passed by here to take a look. I didn't want to do anything just now. It was my spiritual qi that has automatically flowed out without my control. Well, everything he said was so honest, these people would believe it, right? Grina, Feng Ruqing faintly called out. Everyone looked at each other, and no one knew whom she was calling. Until the green-robed holy warrior opened his mouth. Master, my name is Wu Yu, not Green. Everyone was embarrassed. You can't call someone green just because they're wearing a green robe. Can't you just ask them if you don't know their name? Oh, Feng Ruqing was expressionless. Settle that one. Yes, master. The young man in a dark blue robe was pale with fear. I'm just an innocent passerby passing through here. I don't want to get involved in your fight. They'll leave now, all right? What had he done just now? Why did he make the first move without seeing who he was going to attack? If the sect master had not asked him to take the Qin family's Qin Feier back, he would not have to attack Feng Ruqing. Chapter 1256. Someone from the Divine Herb sect came. Feng Ruqing did not say anything as she gave the young man a once-over expressionlessly. The young man was uncomfortable. If it was not for fear of Wu Ye's strength, he might have turned around and left this place as fast as possible. Are you from the Divine Herbs sect? An old voice suddenly spoke from within the crowd. This voice was like a thunderbolt from the clear sky, almost causing the young man's heart to stop beating. He was clearly embarrassed as he looked at the old master who had just spoken and accosted him. Old master, I think you've mistaken me for someone else. Oh, the old master Mu pointed at something on the young man's chest. You have the words Divine Herbs sect written on your robe, and I still don't think anyone will be so bold to impersonate someone from the Divine Herbs sect. The young man lowered his neck stiffly, only then did he clearly see those words on his robe, and he suddenly felt like crying. The people in the Divine Herbs sect were so narcissistic that even the Divine Herbs sect name had to be put on his robes. He was so panicked just now that he had forgotten about something. His name. He would tell them after they had calmed down. The people of the Divine Herbs sect would not only be passing by. They would not come to Tianshan Manor if they wanted nothing. Wu Yu. Feng Ruqing looked cold. Bring him to me? Yes. Wu Yu cupped his fist as he responded respectfully. The crowd was in disbelief as they looked at Wu Yu, who was a respectable figure before. He was so different from the arrogant green-robed man he was before. This transformation, it was too fast that it took people by surprise. The young man's face changed slightly as he looked at Wu Yu, who was swiftly approaching him. He took a few steps backward, and there was a hint of a struggle flickering in his eyes. In the end, he quietly took out a transparent pearl. This was something that the sect master had given him before he left. It could instantly bring the disciples back to the Divine Herbs sect. Of course, not everyone could possess the pearl, but only those with extremely high status within the Divine Herbs sect were eligible to receive the pearl. Me for extra chapters. After all, to the Divine Herbs sect, the pearl was a life-saving weapon that was better than any treasure. The young man slowly closed his eyes and opened them abruptly. He fiercely threw the pearl at Qin Fei and struck a spiritual chi, forcing it toward the transparent pearl. Snap! The pearl burst open on top of Qin Fei's head. In an instant, her body was surrounded by a burst of light, which then became more and more transparent until she vanished before everyone's eyes. Indeed, Qin Fei had disappeared in front of everyone. The young man was quietly relieved. The purpose of his visit was to get the share back and bring back Qin Fei. The sect master had given him the pearl because he was afraid that Qin Fei was too strong for him to handle. If he had the pearl, he could quickly bring Qin Fei to the Divine Herbs sect. Now, it seemed that these people had suppressed Qin Fei, otherwise she would not be in such a mess. It was really a pity about the pearl. The young man was a little distressed, but if he could not complete his mission, the sect master would surely punish him as well. So, he might as well give it a try. Feng Ruqing calmly looked in the direction in which Qin Fei had disappeared. Her dark eyes were as calm as ever, and she did not seem surprised by it. The Divine Herbs sect came for Qin Fei only? After a long while, Feng Ruqing withdrew her gaze and turned to the young man. The young man smiled coldly. Since all of you recognize my identity, I will not hide it anymore. Yes, my sect master is interested in Qin Fei because she's weak but can still make a breakthrough to advanced holy warrior tier. I was asked to come and take her away. Chapter 1257. The Tragic Divine Herbs Sect Skilled Master. Feng Ruqing smiled faintly. Initially, I hadn't thought of going to the Divine Herbs Sect, but since you've taken Qin Fei away, then I'll go there myself. And as for now, the young man panicked, but he tried not to show it on his face. He gritted his teeth hard. Now, what do you want to do? You let Qin Fei go, so you have to stay. Buzz! The huge pot was so excited that the young man could feel the pot salivating, wanting to rush down and swallow him. I am from the Divine Herbs sect. The young man panicked and took a few steps back. Before he could even find a chance to escape, Wu Yu was already behind him, making it impossible for him to leave. The crowds were also startled. Feng Ruqing's possessed man was advanced holy warrior, but the Divine Herbs sect was able to remain in the mainland for so many years. It showed that their people must be strong too. If Feng Ruching fought against the divine herb sect, it would not end well. However, the crowd fell silent again after they saw the huge pot hovering above Feng Ruching's head. No one knew what level of strength this pot was at, but as it was able to make an advanced holy warrior bow to Feng Ruching, it must have a power that was beyond the world's imagination. In that case, perhaps Feng Ruching would still have a chance to fight with the divine herb sect. Little pot cripple him? Feng Ruching glanced at the young man's face expressionlessly. The huge pot buzzed as if it was somewhat puzzled. Master did not want to turn this human into a slave? I have no shortage of fighters right now, but my mother's Fengyan manor should be short of a latrine cleaner. So, you cripple one of his arms and throw him to Fengyan manor to clean the latrines. Everyone could not help but inhale sharply. This young man was not as strong as Wu Yu, but at least he was a holy warrior. Making a holy warrior clean the latrine? It was such a waste. It was such a waste. Me for extra chapters. The old Master Mu's eyes twitched as he stared at Feng Ruching sadly. You don't lack fighters, but I do. If you don't need them, you can give them to me. He's a holy warrior, and his rank in the divine herb sect doesn't seem low. Yet, you're asking him to clean the latrines? Chinger, there's no shortage of people to clean the latrines in Fengyan Manor. Nailin Yin smiled sweetly. The young man was just starting to catch his breath when Nailin Yin spoke again. But General Manor should be short of a latrine cleaner. What about this? You send him to your grandfather at General Manor and let your grandfather set him up. As Nailin Yin had said so, Feng Ruching was not forcing him to be thrown to Fengyan Manor again. She stroked her chin as she smiled. Mother is right. It's best to have grandfather settle him. After all, he is a holy warrior. Besides cleaning the latrines, he can also train generals for our Nailin family. The iron-blooded troop also needs someone like him. It was hard to get a holy warrior's skilled master that could do more work, so she would use him to his bones. The young man was chilled to the bones as he listened to these people's words. He suddenly felt like he was in the middle of hell. Sect Master, these people are so scary, I want to go home. No matter how hard the young man cried, these people in front of him did not feel the slightest pity for him. Chapter 1258. The tragic divine herb sect skilled master 2. They all looked at him with those greedy eyes, as if they wanted to squeeze every last bit of his value out of him. A cold wind blew in the sky. The streets had quieted down, and the storm of war had long dissipated like clouds. Feng Ruching raised her eyes and looked at the crowd behind Qin Li with a cold smile. Qin Li's sneeze weakened and fell to the ground. He looked defeated as his eyes were sunken and dark. He had lost. In the end, he had still lost. Losing so miserably, and there was no turning back. Maiden Ruching, the clans that followed Qin Li panicked and hurriedly kneeled in front of Feng Ruching. Their voices earnest and pleading as they said, "The Qin family forced us to do this. The other clans who disobeyed his orders have been destroyed, and the Zhuge family is one of them. Qin Li has sold Zhuge Jia, the daughter of the Zhuge family, to a brothel." Zhuge Jia? Feng Ruching felt that this name was somewhat familiar, as if she had heard it somewhere. Suddenly, a clear and shy voice spoke in her mind, as if it had happened yesterday. "Maiden Feng, I am Zhuge Jia of the Zhuge family. I saw you at the evening feast, and I can't forget you since then. You're more handsome than any other man in the world. Later, I understand that women are better than men. Maiden Feng, please keep me with you." Zhuge Jia, the shy and lovely girl who wanted to be with Feng Ruching. Was she sold by Qin Li to a brothel? To Feng Ruching, there were only two kinds of women, cute and pleasing, like Tang Yin and Gu Yi, the people of iron-blooded troop, and these girls who surrounded her in Tianshan Manor. The other kind of women was like Qin Feier, who she could never like. That woman had even peeped at her state preceptor. In comparison, the girl named Zhuge Jia was really likable, even though Feng Ruching did not have much contact with her. Such a lovely little girl was sold to a brothel? Feng Ruching frowned abruptly. Which brothel? Me for extra chapters. Welcome Spring Courtyard, and the pimp is Qin Li's old lover. As soon as this was mentioned, everyone looked at Qin Li in disbelief. The pimp of a brothel was Qin Li's old lover? When Yu was still grieving and had not returned to her senses. Previously, she would have definitely jumped over and scratched all over Qin Li's face, leaving bloody marks. Wu Yu, Feng Ruqing said coldly, you go and destroy the welcome spring courtyard. Arrest those who are forcing the good girls to work in the brothel and send them to Gushi. She would not look down on the girls in the brothel, nor would she look down on those who sold themselves for money, because many of them did not have other choices to support their lives. So, the only people she wanted to wipe out were those who forced the good girls into prostitution. If those girls had volunteered, she would not have been able to say much, but if they had been forced, this welcome spring courtyard should indeed be destroyed. Yes, master, will you answer respectfully? The crowd present was somewhat speechless. You're just ending a brothel. Do you really have to send an advanced holy warrior to do it? If you simply choose one person from the Mu family, it's enough to wipe out the whole welcome spring courtyard. After giving her orders, Feng Ruqing looked at the group of people kneeling in front of her. These people were all trembling. They knew that the Qin family was defeated, and if they wanted to live, they had to bow down to Feng Ruqing. Chapter 1259. The truth, Feng Ruqing's gaze fell on the people in front of him. These people were all frozen. They lowered their heads in fear as they tried to minimize their presence. Old master, what do you want to do with these people? Feng Ruqing smiled as she turned to the old master Mu. These were Tianxin Manor's people, after all. It would be better if they took care of it. I will tie them all up and send them to the chief master. With one hand behind his back, the old master Mu looked at these people kneeling in front of him with his sharp, cold eyes. As for the Qin family, they are one of the culprits and deserve to be executed on the spot. But for the sake of the 4 families of Tianxin Manor, I will let the Qin family live for a few more days. The old master Mu paused. So, hang these 2 on the city gate and roast them to death with a blazing fire. Qin Li's legs weakened as he fell to the ground. The old master Mu was too cruel. It would be better and easier to just finish him off. Qin Li, the old master Mu walked slowly toward Qin Li. His face looked cold as he asked, tell me, is Qin Shaoqing's younger brother? If you tell me, he'll give you a good thrashing. Qin Li frowned. He stared at Qin for a few moments and suddenly laughed out loud. Ha! Qin is the one that I've saved from someone else, not Feng Tianyu's child. I save his life, but he is doing this to me. Even if I die, he'll curse him for the rest of his life. Up until now, Qin Li still refused to acknowledge Qin Chen's origins. He smiled mockingly, and his eyes were full of anger and contempt. Indeed, he would never make it easy for these people even if he died. Besides the people of Tianxin Manor, the Divine Herb Sect and Deity's Gate all knew that he, Qin Li, had saved an orphan. But the orphan had bit the hand that fed him and wanted to kill his adopted parents. Even the kindest people would never let Qin Chen live a good life. Even if they could not harm Qin Chen, they could still make him suffer from the curses for the rest of his life. So what if I even made Qin Chen sacrifice his blood? He's not going to die just from giving some blood. I am his savior, and those righteous people in this world will definitely seek justice for my Qin family. Ha! Feng Ruqing kicked him hard. Qin Li suddenly spurted out a mouthful of blood. His face turned pale, paralyzed. He had just suffered a severe injury from Wu Ye's attack, so he was unable to withstand Feng Ruqing's kick and was too weak to speak anymore. Me for extra chapters. I think hanging you on the city gate and roasting you to death is too easy. The chief master should have set up a penal code. Old Master Mu, send him to the chief manor. I will not allow him to die until the last drop of his blood is drained and the last piece of his skin is peeled off. The young girl was stunning and domineering. She was beautiful and unrestrained, like an emperor looking down on the world he ruled. Qin Li's face was pale, but he still smiled stubbornly and chuckled. Feng Ruqing pulled Qin Li up and dumped him in front of the old Master Mu. She then turned her gaze to Wen Yu. Wen Yu was already scared silly. Or perhaps it was because her daughter had escaped, so she had started to think about saving herself. As Feng Ruqing approached her, when Yes' legs became weak, she almost fell to the ground. Somehow, she always had the feeling of being overpowered by the young girl's fierce gaze. I've told you that, when you was trembling as she said, my daughter's health has been bad since she was young. And there was a master. Chapter 1260. The truth too when you shut up. Qin Li's eyes were red as he gathered all his strength and roared. His body trembled with anger. Feng Ruqing did not hesitate to step on Qin Li's mouth when she turned to Wenyu. If you don't want to suffer like this, then you should tell me everything. Wenyu trembled harder. Death was not terrifying. What was terrifying was living a life that was worse than death. Wenyu hated Feng Ruqing so much, but she did not dare to go against her at a time like this. Wenyu knew Feng Ruqing would do as she had said. I'll tell you everything. It was a fortune teller who told us that there was a newborn baby in the eastern part of Lu Yun Kingdom that could save my daughter in the future back then. Qin Li had sent someone to that place and taken Qin Shen away. Qin Shen's blood is special and suitable to be a drug primer. He is a supreme treasure that can save lives, so that's why we took Qin Shen away. Feng Ruqing fiercely kicked Wenyu and flipped her over. Wenyu was in pain that her eyes were almost popping out. Her face turned paler as she coughed hard. I've already told you everything. What more do you want? Feng Ruqing sneered. You talk too much. In an instant, when Yes' entire face lost its color, her lips trembled as she could not say a word. Indeed, she had mentioned all of these to let people know how useful Qin Shen was. So anyone would surely come to take him away in the future anyway. But she did not expect that Feng Ruqing would immediately discover her plan. The old Master Mu walked toward Wenyu, expressionlessly. Even if Qin Shen's blood is special, it can only alleviate the condition, not cure it. Otherwise, why hasn't your daughter's illness been cured after so many years? When Yes' lips trembled, unable to say a word. And my situation is worse than your daughter's. At least your daughter is just weak and sickly, but I almost died and had even lost all of my strength. Me for extra chapters. This was the first time that old Master Mu admitted about what happened to the strength that he had once lost in front of these people. Wenyu was somewhat puzzled as she stared at the old Master Mu. The old Master Mu smiled coldly. But now, I have recovered. I have gotten previous my strength back, and even more, I could make a breakthrough. Do you know why? Wenyu was stunned, unable to say a word. Because the old Master Mu paused for a moment. Because of Feng Ruqing? Indeed, it was because of his granddaughter-in-law that his grandson had found. She saved not only him, but also the Mu family. She was the Mu family's savior. Wenyu was even more puzzled, not quite understanding what the old Master Mu meant by that. Oh, right, you should know that Qin Shen. No, Feng Qin and Xiao Qing were twins. They were born on the same day, at the same time in the same place, even the same household, when Yes' body stiffened as she stared at the old Master Mu in shock. Initially, she had thought that the person that the old master was referring to was Qin Shen. It was because the Qin family knew his special bloodline since the first time they saw him. When he was born, his blood was sweet and carried the herb's scent, making him the most suitable drug primer. After bringing him back to the Qin family, they had used some methods to cover up the scent of his bloodline completely, but his blood was still equally effective in saving lives and curing diseases. Chapter 1261. The Truth 3 Therefore, when you had never thought of Feng Ruqing. Impossible. That's impossible. When you shook her head vigorously as her eyes were filled with pain and sorrow. I don't believe it. I don't believe what all of you are saying. The Grandmaster meant Qin Shen. It definitely was him. Old Master Mu looked at Wenyu, who was being so stubborn, and sneered. Then, was Qin Feier's disease cured by Qin Shen? Wenyu could not say a word. The sorrow and pain on her face had already answered the question on her behalf. Indeed, if Qin Shen was the life-saving medicine that the Grandmaster was talking about, then why was it that Feier disease kept returning and isn't completely cured of the illness after all these years? It is because there is just no way to completely cure it. If it was Feng Ruching, if she could even cure the old master's disease, perhaps she could even cure Feier. At that moment, when Yes' face was as white as ash as she sat on the ground in a daze, unable to regain her senses for a long while. She only started crying pitifully in sorrow and pain after a while. Fei, I'm sorry. It is I who is sorry toward you. Although her Feier was sick, she had been so kind nonetheless. But why? Why did she have to meet such an end in the end? Good thing the people from Divine Herb Sect had brought her away. She did not know why exactly the Divine Herb Sect had brought Feier away, but no matter what, it was better than falling into Feng Ruching's hands. As such, she was also assured. A cool, breezy voice tinged with mockery rang from behind her. Back then, I had originally thought that your Qin family had really kindly saved a child. I never thought there was such a story behind it. Your Qin family has really hidden your skeletons too well. A path opened as the crowd parted. Everyone raised their heads to see who it was, and saw Gu Shi approaching in big strides. Behind him was a group of family clan heads. For so many years in Tianshan Manor, it was not that Gu Shi did not expand his own powers, but when the battle started, all the family clans that had followed him were being controlled, so much so that they were not even able to step out of their doors. He was only able to bring them out after he had recovered. Everyone looked at the Qin family's group of people with disdain and ridicule. Me for extra chapters. It seemed that nobody had ever thought that Qin Shin was a child the Qin family had stolen. Before this, I had always thought that the Qin family were kind-hearted. Be it Qin Feier or Qin Li. I never thought that Qin Feier was so vicious, and furthermore, I would never have guessed that Qin Li is such an ambitious man. This pair of father and daughter had really hidden too well. Perhaps Qin Feier had indeed once been kind, but her kindness contained a trace of selfishness, and it was merely to protect her image and reputation on the outside. Qin Li was also a good old person. He was as gentle as jade, indifferent toward fame and fortune, and had even saved an orphan. However, today, it was revealed that Qin Li had actually stolen this orphan from the arms of another parent to save Qin Feier's life. He had thus caused an entire family to be separated for so many years. Not only did these people steal Qin Shun, but they had also treated him badly, and had even made up a lie saying that they had saved his life. After Qin Shun had served in the Qin family for so many years, he had to bear the scolding of being called a white-eyed wolf one. Hilarious. Too ridiculous. From the beginning to the end, Qin Shun only had a cold expression. His eyes were clear and did not contain any hint of surprise. No one was able to detect his emotions. However, he simply stood by Feng Ruching's side and did not take a single step away, just like a bodyguard, carefully protecting her. Even if he was really saved by the Qin family, he had long repaid their favor after all those years. When he had first returned to the Qin family, it was merely for Shao Qing's sake. That was it. Besides, he was actually stolen from his very own family. One white-eyed wolf means an ungrateful person. Chapter 1262. The truth for the young man looked at Feng Ruching with his clear eyes. His eyes were as brilliant as the sun, giving off a warm, fuzzy light. Shao Qing, when will we go back home? Shao Qing, when will we go back home? The young man's warm voice also softened Feng Ruching's heart. She turned around to look at him and said, When Nan Xian returns, we will go back together. All right. His voice was still as clear as a natural spring, pure and sweet. It was as if the young man had such a look only when Feng Ruching was around. Even the pink scar at the corner of his brow seemed to be especially good-looking. Manor Master Gu, these people will be handed over to you to be dealt with. Old Master Mu cupped his fist. I still need to clean up my own family's mess today, so I will take my leave first. My two in-laws, Sui, Shao Qing, Shao Chun, let's go back first. When the old master was saying these words, his gaze was sharp like a blade, scaring the clansmen of the Mu family until they shivered. Even merely standing around left them feeling uncomfortable. Master, we were also forced to do so back then. We had to do it to protect the Mu family. You need to trust our well-meaning intentions. Muing knelt down first, speaking in great distress. Everything he had done was for the Mu family. Even if he had done wrong, it was worth forgiving. Old Master Mu glanced coldly at the old man who was kneeling at the forefront and said expressionlessly, "Our Mu family does not need someone who does not obey my orders, makes his own decisions, and is, even more so, afraid of death." Muing trembled and stopped talking. The other people also lowered their heads, not daring to say more. "However, considering that all of you are part of my Mu family's clan, I will not deal with all of you. All you should leave the Mu family. From now on, all of you are no longer the people of my Mu family. Your life and death will not be related to me." All of the Mu family's people trembled as they raised their heads to look at Old Master Mu nervously. As part of the Mu family, normally they had done quite a bit of showing off and domination outside. They had offended quite a number of people in the past years. However, since those people were afraid of the Mu family, nobody had dared to settle scores with them. If they lost the protection of the Mu family, their endings were pretty predictable. Therefore, when they heard the old master's words, all these people started panicking. One of them pounced on Old Master Mu and held onto his old thigh as he cried loudly with snot dripping out of his nose. "Master, I have done wrong. I know my mistakes. Please, I beg you, do not chase me out. I really know my mistakes. I will never dare to do this again in the future." Me for extra chapters. Old Master Mu closed his eyes in abysmal pain. He had known these people and interacted with them for so many years. How could he not have any feelings? Thus, he had given them many chances before. However, these people did not know how to repent, simply wasting the chances he had given them. How could he possibly forgive them again? "All of you should just leave. Don't force me to the corner. Otherwise, I'm afraid that all of you would be unable to leave without any harm. And who knows, maybe the whole world would know that all of you were chased out the door by me." The old master opened his eyes and said heartlessly, without leaving any room for negotiation, "These people only thought about protecting themselves when they met with danger. If there was a next time, he dared not guarantee that he would not be stabbed in the back in Mu residence by these people just to ensure their own survival. Such an outcome was not something he could bear." Muing stood up from the ground, shaking. He understood, no matter how he begged, the old Master Mu would not possibly let him stay. "Master," his voice was trembling, "I really was doing everything in consideration of the Mu family. I did not want the Mu family to be utterly destroyed." Chapter 1263. The Truth. The old Master Mu had his back, facing Muing as he kept silent. Muing finally decided to stop begging. He faced Old Master Mu's back as he bowed deeply. "I understand. I will take my grandson and leave the Mu family." Leaving this Mu family, a place that he had lived for so many years. It was no doubt that he was reluctant to leave. However, the old master's mind had been made up. No matter how he begged, it would not make a difference. He might as well leave himself the last shred of dignity and leave immediately without hesitation. As the other people saw how determined Old Master Mu was, despair eventually appeared on their faces. They slowly rose, and without saying any last words, they took a long, respectful look at Mu residence in which they had grown up. Then, they turned around and left without looking back. The sky turned quiet. Gusher brought those people Qin Li was leading away. What awaited them was a severe punishment. It was also the time Old Master Mu thoroughly cleaned up the family next. Logically speaking, all these were matters related to the Mu family, and as an outsider, Nailin Yin naturally was not supposed to say anything. However, when she glanced past Qin Yin, she could not help but smile a little. Previously, when Elder Lei Yun returned to report to me, he had already mentioned about Mu Manor's young manor master's concubine. Seeing her today, I really don't know which part of her could be discussed on the same page as my in-law to actually be able to charm the young master until he put her in the center of his world. Awkwardness appeared on Mu Ling's handsome face. He wanted to say a few words to defend himself, but he did not know where to begin and could only awkwardly stand by the side. Suyi smiled calmly. It was not that Mu Ling's judgment was bad. It was just me who did not have much of an eye. I was actually unable to tell of their affair. All these years, the only thing I am grateful to Mu Ling for is that he had given me a son. She had long been able to approach the past openly. Otherwise, she would not have returned to the Mu family. White Phoenix nodded desperately. Exactly. Suyi's judgment was not good in the past. However, I believe that Suyi's judgment will definitely be extremely good in the future. For example, between her and Xiaoqing, her judgment will forever be better than Mu Ling's. What kind of judgment did Mu Ling have? He wished to choose a daughter-in-law for Nanxian with a one-track mind, but all the daughters-in-law he had chosen had all become phone rookings. Oh, he had even recklessly tried to find Nanxian quite a few concubines. However, all those concubines added up could not even measure up to a single phone roaching. He really did not know what kind of judgment he had. Could it be that he thought Nanxian would listen to him? What a joke! Me for extra chapters. Sometimes Nanxian did not even listen to Suyi. Perhaps he was only willing to listen to phone roaching alone. White Phoenix suddenly felt that he needed to hug phone rooking's thigh. With this thigh, perhaps Nanxian would really call him father in the future. Suyi also liked phone roaching a lot. If phone roaching could put in a few good words for him, would Suyi agree to help him give birth to a few little phoenixes? The more White Phoenix thought about it, the more elated he felt. He could not help but smile. Mushi saw that the mighty forces had left. Thus he turned around and wanted to run away whilst other people were not paying attention. Coincidentally, Feng Ruqing raised her head and saw Mu Zai's departing figure. She randomly picked up a brick and threw it at him, and it hit squarely Mu Zai's head with a thud. Mu Zai's vision went black as he lost consciousness. Sierra! Chun Qingjian's heart-wrenching call rang in the sky as she crawled back up from the ground, quickly rushing over to Mu Shi. She hugged his unconscious body with tears streaming down her face. If you want to deal with someone, then deal with me. Sierra is innocent. Feng Ruqing raised her brows as she looked down at Qin Qingyan, who was crying whilst holding Mu Shi. Chapter 1264. The Truth 6. She raised her brow. Mu Shi had teased me before. The moment she said this, everyone looked at Mu Shi with murderous intent. White Phoenix was thoroughly enraged. Perhaps he could let it go and forget that Black Dragon had wanted to snatch away Xiao Qingqing. But this Mu Shi, what on earth was he? He was just a scum. How dare he had such inappropriate intentions towards Xiao Qingqing? If Xiao Qingqing was snatched away, Nanxian would definitely be in a fit of anger. Once Nanxian got angry, then he could never be Nanxian's father in this lifetime. Could it be that Mu Ling knew its intentions towards Suyi and had purposely made Mu Shi snatch Xiao Qingqing away to anger Nanxian? The more White Phoenix thought about it, the more logical he felt that it was. In a fit of anger, he rushed toward Mu Shi and snatched him from Chun Qingjian's arms. Instantly, he flew across the sky and ruthlessly threw Mu Shi down from up high in the sky. If Mu Zai's cultivation was strong enough, with this throw, he would be lightly injured at most. However, Mu Shi was too useless. Even Mu Ling was disappointed in his innate talent. As such, when Mu Shi fell from the sky, a huge pit formed when he touched the ground. He was so dead that he could not possibly be more dead. If one were to discuss this, it could be said that Mu Shi could be considered lucky. Even his death was not painful. He was thrown to his death by White Phoenix when he was unconscious. Comparatively, Qin Qingyan and Mu Huan were not so fortunate. Mu Huan stared at the man in the pit in a daze. She clenched her fists so hard that her fingers were shivering. She hated Qin Qingjian's biasness. In order to support Mu Shi, she had actually tricked her to go to Jiazin's side. But Mu Shi was ultimately still her biological younger brother. Seeing her younger brother die before her, Mu Huan was unable to look away. No! Mu Huan had only regained her senses when she heard a loud cry. She turned her head to look over and saw Qin Qingyan rushing over to kneel by the pit with tears of despair flowing down her face. Suddenly, Chen Qingyan raised her head and glared at Mu Ling with hatred, her eyes full of resentment. Me for extra chapters. Mushi was your son, your biological son. How could you see him die right before you without doing anything? How could you? Chen Qingyan was not even so angry when Mu Huan was being tortured by the huge pot earlier on. Now that her beloved son had died, her greatest hope in life was also lost. Mu Ling remained stunned as he stared at Mu Shi, who was lying at the bottom of the pit, and sorrow flashed in his eyes. This life, regardless of how many bad things he had done, he had still given the best to his children. Mu Shi had been with him for so many years. To have so suddenly lost him and to say that he was not sad was absolutely impossible. A human was not a plant. How could he not have feelings? It was just that Mu Ling did not say a word this time around, keeping his silence. Chen Qingyan laughed out loud. Her laughter was maniacal. Mu Ling, I can tell you something. The poison your mother suffered from back then was actually a poison I administered. Mu Ling shuddered. He looked at Chen Qingyan in shock and anger. What did you say? I heard my mother talking to your mother back then. My mother wanted us to be engaged at a young age, allowing me to marry you when I grew up. However, your mother rejected it. In the Mu family, I have always been living under charity. Those servants looked down on me as they felt that we were eating and drinking without contributing back to the Mu family, relying on your mother. So since then I swore I would not always have such days. I would turn things around. I wanted to make those who looked down on me to have to rely on my whims and fancies for survival in the future. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.